Welcome to the 700 Club. More than $3 billion. That's how much Americans are expected to gamble away on the NCAA basketball tournament by the time it ends tonight. That's the most in the history of the game, with legalized sports betting now driving the increase.
As many as 10 million Americans live with a gambling addiction. CBN's Brody Carter shows us how harmful that is for individuals, families, and for society.
Now I can bet the game on FanDuel Sportsbook anywhere in Pennsylvania.
The ads seem to come from all directions, and legalized sports betting opened the floodgates. The industry is booming, with more than $52 billion wagered last year alone.
Sports wagering is a bad bet for everyone.
In 30 states, D.C. and Puerto Rico have given the okay, providing access to numerous available betting platforms. Paul Betura, with Focus on the Family, says as this encouragement to gamble grows, so do the problems.
For Christians, it's a particularly nefarious thing. As believers, we're called to serve the poor. And what does gambling do? It actually exploits the poor. As Christians, we're called to love our neighbor. But what does gambling do? It only works. We only win if the other guy loses.
This year's March Madness will generate the most betting in tournament history. Some 45 million Americans expected to wager more than $3 billion.
We're also encouraged to work for our wages and not to expect something for nothing. But that's sort of the exact opposite of what gambling is.
Still, Christians aren't universally against it. Not even 40% think sports betting is morally wrong, according to Lifeway research. So Christian leaders hope to uncover gambling's ugly truth and teach God-honoring ways to protect your money and family.
The fact is, most people who gamble lose.
Reports show apps like Skybet, one of the industry's most popular, have adopted invasive tracking and profiling techniques to identify problem gamblers.
God gives us free will. If you want to do that and throw your money away, be my guest. But I would suggest go through the biblical stewardship course. Find out what God's word has to say about this issue.
Art Ally, founder of the Timothy Plan, approach to mutual funds, says to break the chains of gambling, we first need to learn the biblical approach to handling money. That can lead to growing wealth in healthy ways. To help, he's giving away this resource and 9-hour course on his website, timothyplan.com.
All you have to do is click on it. It is free. We don't charge anybody for it. It's our gift to the body of Christ. Because the problem we have is all of our training in handling money, no matter what aspect of money, comes from the world, not the church in general.
Art says the church's approach to stewardship in general is giving, which is why he's teaching about spending, saving, and investing with integrity to hopefully transform lives. Brody Carter, CBN News.
Well, there's a reason casinos track problem gamblers and offer them free hotel nights and free meals and all the other freebies, is because they know that they're hooked and that they can literally tap that resource until that resource is tapped out. There's a reason in America gambling was outlawed. You look back in our history, and there were a bunch of train wrecks all caused by gambling, where people would gamble away their family fortunes. They would leave their children without any food. And in the aftermath of that just terrible tragedies, we all decided as a country that gambling shouldn't happen in the United States. Now we're opening it up, and it was first through these lotteries, which I view as a tax on the poor, where, you know, for $1 or $10 a ticket, you have some kind of dream that you're going to go home with $100 million. They got away with it on the basis that, well, we're going to fund the education system. The money from this gambling is going to go into educate children and all of this kind of thing. These things are horrible, and why any Christian would go into this is a mystery, but please don't. What gambling does is it releases things, chemicals in your brain. You become addicted to it, and when you're addicted to it, there's no end until you're out of money. In other news, horrifying scenes of brutality. That's what Ukrainian forces are reporting as they move into areas abandoned by Russian troops. John Jessup has more on that story from our CBN News Bureau in Washington. John?
That's right, Gordon. Ukraine is accusing Russian forces of committing war crimes in the city of Bucha near the outskirts of Kyiv. A warning to our viewers, some of the images you're about to see are disturbing. Here's CBN's Dale Hurd.
Western leaders are condemning the atrocities in the town of Bucha that are said to have been committed by retreating Russian troops. In the city northwest of the capital, Kyiv, bodies lie in the streets. Some victims with their hands bound, and others shot at close range. Local officials say it appears some were tortured. Among those killed, the dean of the Slavic Evangelical Seminary, Vitaly Vinogradov, reportedly killed by the retreating Russian army. Bucha's mayor said hundreds were buried in a mass grave. This satellite image shows a 45-foot-long trench near a church. Residents said Russian troops went building to building checking people's phones for any evidence of anti-Russian activity, and if any was found, took them away or shot them. Ukrainian President Zelensky on CBS Face the Nation calls what happened in Bucha genocide.
When we find people with hands tied behind their back and decapitated, the kids who were killed and tortured, so it wasn't enough just to kill.
The head of NATO told CNN there must be an investigation by the International Criminal Court.
It is a brutality against civilians we haven't seen in Europe for decades.
Beaten back from Kyiv, Russian forces are retreating to the south and east of the country, known as the Donbass region. Sunday at the Central Evangelical Church in Lviv, the choir sang Amazing Grace. The sermon was about God's love and loving others. As world leaders learn of what happened in Bucha, they're comparing it to the crimes committed by the Soviets and Nazis, and some are calling for even tougher economic penalties on Russia. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
All right, thank you, Dale. While millions of Ukrainians are fleeing the fighting, not everyone can pick up and go. That's why one American minister is doing what she can to help rescue those with disabilities and special needs trapped by their circumstances. CBN Charlene Aaron has the story.
More than 50 years ago, a diving accident left Johnny Erickson Tata in a wheelchair, unable to walk. Since then, she has been a strong advocate for people with disabilities. Her latest work, rescuing those stuck in Ukraine since Russia invaded the country. She told us on CBN's Prayer Link about the difficulties many have been facing, calling their plight horrific.
Just imagine if you're a quadriplegic like me. I can't use my hands. I'm in a wheelchair. And if you were on the 7th floor of an apartment building and you were in Mariupol being bombed and there were rocket strikes, it's not like you can jump out of bed, grab a few things, rush out the front door, and make a dash for the border. You can't do that. And so a lot of these people with disabilities are stuck in apartment buildings. A lot of them are in basements.
She explained how her ministry is helping get many out.
We've been working with our in-country partner, Galina. Galina and our teams have been out searching for these people, even in the most dangerous eastern parts of Ukraine, to rescue them and get them across the border and to safe haven in not only Poland, but Germany and the Netherlands. And we've evacuated over 300 people with disabilities thus far and caregivers, and we're still active.
Just before the invasion, construction was to begin on a disability center in Ukraine called Johnny's House, designed to meet the spiritual, physical, economic, and social needs of people living with disabilities. While the war forced the ministry to redirect its efforts, it hasn't stopped the outreach.
We quickly pivoted, and all the concrete, all the cement, the cinder blocks, the lumber, everything ready to go for the construction of Johnny's House in Ukraine, we suddenly reallocated and redirected to be used to shore up homes and care facilities for the elderly, to protect people with disabilities. So those items all were put to good use, not in constructing a Johnny's House, but of course barricading people so that they might have a safe haven.
a path no doubt filled with danger.
But just the Christians who are volunteering to drive these buses along the corridors where there is heavy shelling, even the drivers of these vans are taking a great risk.
Meanwhile, Johnny is encouraging believers to pray for those helping with rescue efforts in Ukraine.
These people are exhausted, shell-shocked, but nevertheless, they're practicing Christianity with its sleeves rolled up. And so please pray for Galina and her network of friends and co-workers who are making the valiant and very brave and courageous efforts to go into the most dangerous parts, find these people with disabilities, and bring them to safety.
Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
Brave and courageous efforts indeed. Well, when her family narrowly escaped a rocket attack, one Ukrainian mother decided to take her children out of the war zone. Upon arriving in Poland, the family found help in a shelter supported by CBN's Operation Blessing.
On the 27th of February, we came under fire. We were coming back from church in the evening on Sunday. A rocket flew directly at our car.
Ludmila and her family cried out for God's protection.
We prayed, we screamed. I never thought my kids could pray like this. They were born and raised in a Christian family, but we never prayed so hard. The rocket was like a shooting star entering the atmosphere. Then it just went out. It didn't fall anywhere. There was no blast. None of the cars were damaged. Nothing.
Ludmila left Ukraine to keep her children safe. After making the long trek to Poland, she was taken in by a local church that partners with Operation Blessing. They found refuge, but the children were still scared.
After we came here and the pastor showed us the shower, restrooms, washing machine, towels, and everything, my girls said, "Mom, this is such a good bomb shelter." The kids who are so scared aren't looking at the amount of toys or the playgrounds yet.
It'll take time for the girls to know they're safe again. But thanks to the generosity of Operation Blessing partners, we're working with churches in Poland to bring aid and comfort to many Ukrainian families like Ludmila's.
We are very grateful for the people who are supporting us. Thank you for the help and for believing in our Ukraine.
Ways to be the hands and feet of Jesus. Gordon?
You can be a part of it. You can be part of the relief effort. We're working through a wonderful warehouse facility in Poland, completely stocking that with food, water, necessities for the refugees fleeing Ukraine into Poland. We're also working with the Orphans Promise centers. Orphans Promise has been there for 20 years. CBN has been in Ukraine for 30 years now. Operation Blessing operating in Ukraine for 30 years. But there's all the existing centers. These are not things that are popped up since the war. These are things that have been there for well over a decade, and we're using them now to supply relief, much needed relief for the displaced persons within Ukraine and also those refugees fleeing these horrible conditions. What's happening in Ukraine is absolutely horrifying. We want to be there to let people know that we love them. We want to provide for them. If you want to be a part of it, it's real easy. All you have to do is pick up the phone and call us, 1-800-700-7000. Say, I want to give to the Operation Blessing Disaster Relief Fund. You can mail a check to us at CBN Center, Virginia Beach, Virginia, 23463. Just put Disaster Relief Fund in the memo line. You can text OB Crisis to 71777, or you can go to cbn.com. There's a place where you can designate your gift. Either way, do it and be a part of helping those refugees in their hour of need.